It's such a wonderful crowd here, and we're going to get started because we've got an action-packed schedule. Good morning and welcome to the 2015 Children and Youth Issues Briefing. This is the 11th year of this great event, and I know there are people out there who've been at every one. My name's Denise Mayotte, and I'm the Executive Director of the Sheltering Arms Foundation and also the co-chair of the Start Early Funders Coalition. Today, we're gathered to highlight our shared commitment to a brighter future for Minnesota's children and youth. With the 2015 legislative session underway, the fortunes of Minnesota's children can and must be a top priority of legislators from both sides of the aisle. Yes. Today we're going to hear from leaders in state government, including Governor Mark Dayton, who's almost here, commissioners from the Children's Cabinet, legislators from both parties, youth from across the state, and I want to give a special welcome to the youth who traveled a long way to be here, and advocates who will be championing a variety of legislative proposals this session. It's going to be clear by the end of the day that in order to achieve success for Minnesota's children and youth, we must pursue policies that address the whole child across the continuum, from cradle to career. From prenatal health and education for mothers and families, through high-quality early learning opportunities, all the way to engaging and empowering youth. It's our responsibility as the leaders of government, nonprofits, foundations, community organizations, and advocacy organizations to ensure that Minnesota gives every child the opportunity to thrive. It's a matter of equity in a state that with among the greatest disparities between low-income children of color and their more fortunate peers. I'm very happy to see so many people in the audience today. I think we're almost 900, 1,000 strong. It's great. It shows the depth of passion for the issues that will be emphasized today. But our efforts and attention must extend beyond this event. This is just the start. In order to achieve the true change that the children and youth of our state desperately need, we must push our elected officials, including those in the room today, maybe especially them, to make good on the promises that they made on the campaign trail to support children and families. Before we embark on our ambitious agenda for today, I'd like to thank our generous event partners. This event is organized by the Start Early Funders Coalition, which is a statewide coalition of 27 foundations committed to ensuring that all children have access to high-quality early learning opportunities. In addition to the Start Early Funders, the Minnesota Council on Foundations and the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits provided support for the event, and thank you so much to our partners in this event. Additionally, this event is possible due to the generous donations of Ecolab, as well as the Sheltering Arms Foundation and the Greater Twin Cities United Way. Thank you so much to all of you for making today's event possible. Also, for the first time, today's event is being webcast, which will help encourage statewide participation and enable access for all who wish to participate. So hello to our online audience. We're really glad to know that this event continues beyond those who are in the room today. And especially with today's freezing rain, it's kind of a good thing that some people had the option to watch online. Lastly, before I introduce our great MC for today's event, I'd like to encourage those of you who use Twitter to tweet about the event using the hashtag CYIB15. That's the letters CYIB15. And I know we'll get some great tweets and some great quotes from today's event. So now, without further ado, Please let me introduce my co-chair for the Start Early Funders Coalition and today's MC, a champion for children, Frank Forsberg from the Greater Twin Cities United Way.
Well, it's both easy and fun to be engaged in such an amazing coalition, and Denise, thanks for the nice introduction. As your MC, my job is to get you through 2 full days of material by noon. Now, how we're going to do this is we're going to try to move briskly. The objective today was to introduce you to as many leaders as we could in a short period of time who are doggedly committed to changing the outcomes for youth and children in the state of Minnesota. And we asked them to come and just share 1 or 2 highlights of the things they care the most about or that they think will have the biggest impact on changing the course of outcomes, the course of the quality of life for our young children and youth in our community. And so just know it's intended to be an introduction to those key issues. We're going to follow each small panel with some questions and answers to see if we can't tease out for you what some of the challenges and obstacles might be, because we know that building consensus around solutions is hard work. It takes a lot of voices to work together and to come together. And so for each of our leaders, they are committed to building that level of consensus around solutions. And then by the end of the day, we're going to finish with a panel of some of our legislative leaders, because we know change in our state through the legislative process is going to take a bipartisan effort. It's going to take cooperation and collaboration between the House and the Senate and the governor, and it's going to take an awful lot of consensus building. This does not happen unless your voices are engaged, unless you become part of that process. So we invite you to enjoy the sampling of great leaders and great ideas, and then you'll know what to do at the end of the session. Denise mentioned that this is our 11th youth issues briefing, and what a great tradition we've been building in this state to bring this many advocacy voices together. It is the first time, however, that the governor of the state of Minnesota has been able to join us, and how delighted could we be to have Governor Dayton here today. I will not read his entire resume. We all know that. What I will say is that he started his career as a school teacher. I think because of that grounding and that foundation, you can see the passion and the commitment that he has to the youngest in our communities and in our state. I also know, as you do, that he doesn't mind mixing it up just a little bit, and he doesn't mind standing tall for those who do not have a chance to vote, and for those who are youngest amongst us. Please welcome the governor of the state of Minnesota, Governor Mark Dayton. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Frank. A kind introduction. Although I'm embarrassed that I find out that I haven't been here before. You know, I just got inaugurated 2 weeks ago. I'm out of excuses, but and this is incredible to look and see this kind of response demonstrating the depths of interest in our children and our youth, which is in itself enormously promising. Now, a little setback when I looked at the program here, and it says that I'm giving an address, whereas my staff told me I was giving remarks. The difference is that an address is supposed to contain something of substantive value by somebody who knows the subject, and the remarks are so you put in the very front of the program so the people who arrive late won't miss anything important. So these are intended to be remarks. And with the tweeting there, you know, I had a press secretary who was irreverent, let's put it that way, and she always looking down and fiddling while I was giving my speech. And so I said one time, well, Katie, what are you doing all that? She claimed that she was tweeting out the good positive messages about my remarks. I later found out that she actually was playing Scrabble with somebody in the press corps a couple blocks away. But after reviewing the speech, I decided she was just exercising good judgment, so I made her my campaign manager. But I mean it sincerely. I want to thank all of you for your extraordinary dedication to the cause of better children, better youth, better families, and that means better state and better nation and better world. And as you know, the challenges are never ending. And I want to acknowledge the fabulous members of my cabinet who are here today. Commissioner of Education Brenda Casilius, Commissioner of Human Services Cindy Jessen, Commissioner of Health Ed Ellinger, and a couple of their top people who are here also. And I just, including Melvin Carter, who was on the crashed ice course yesterday. So it was a good warm up for today's activities. You know, 4 years ago, my first session, the first one of these meetings I missed, if you're tracking this calendar. At the very end, there's no state money directly for early childhood learning, and at the end of the session where we had both the Republican majorities in the House and the Senate, some enlightened members of the leadership who were trying to circumvent the fanatical conviction of some of their extreme right-wing members that early childhood meant you somehow inserted a microchip into the skull of every child under the age of 5 so government could monitor his or her whereabouts for the rest of the time. So there was no money. They'd refused to put any money whatsoever in for early childhood, and we spent part of one of the conference committees at the end trying to figure out how to connect some enabling legislation in one bill to $4 million of funding in another bill and make that connection, which they enabled us to do, which meant then we had $4 million of funding for early childhood, and we were not satisfied, but we were certainly pleased. 2 years ago, we passed in legislation, different leadership, $54 million of additional funding for early childhood, half for each year of the biennium. And we were criticized primarily because the cap of $5,000 was deemed insufficient to cover the scholarship needs of people who could otherwise not access that quality child care. Next Tuesday, my budget will propose allocating a billion-dollar projected surplus, $372 million to children and education, $154 million to additional money for human services, about half of which will go to programs serving the elderly and those with disabilities. The other half will go to serving children and families. Thank you, but that's not the purpose of my point. Although anytime you want to interrupt with applause, please feel free to go ahead. Earlier this week, I proposed $100 million of a tax credit for families to help them afford the cost of child-independent care, expanding the eligibility and the amount. So if you add those up, roughly speaking, about $600 million of the billion surplus, well over half, I'm proposing to direct toward the Children and Youth Family Services. And still not my point, but thank you. And already I've received even more serious criticism than I received 2 years ago or 4 years ago because money is not going in the direction that some people think it should be going, which, just raises a note of concern on my part that in fact, the hearings, I'm told, have gotten even to a point where what we're proposing to do is being criticized as being harmful to certain enterprises, harmful to the kids themselves. And, it's sort of like, well, if you want to be top of the pyramid, you can just stand out better than anyone else. You don't have to annihilate everybody else. And I would just exercise that note of caution. I know that most of you believe very passionately in what you're doing. All of you believe passionately in what you're doing. most of you believe passionately that your approach is better than others, the best of all. But if it gets into the kind of fierce infighting that prevailed a couple of years ago in terms of allocation of funds, I think you're going to do harm to yourselves and you're going to do harm to the people you're serving. The legislature is probably not going to come up with $600 million for the purposes that I'm proposing, and the challenge is to get the resources, many of the resources as possible, competing against other needs, to be able to provide the services that you want to provide. And today there was even in the paper a story about federal elected official, dedicated person attacking a state official, dedicated person, for proposing $5 million to help a school, Indian school in northwestern Minnesota. And the criticism was, well, that money, if the state provided that money, it would mean that the federal money, which has not been forthcoming in more than a decade, would be even farther removed. So now we're arguing about whose money is going to supplant money that isn't coming from somebody else. I think you hopefully get my point. Despite all we're doing, despite the fact that we're doing more, and I'm open, my proposal next week will suggest some areas where funding could be increased. There are other areas that not as much as people want, and I'm certainly wide open, flexible to discussing those priorities and how the money can be best directed toward the people that we all want to help. I just hope and urge that it be done in a constructive way so that we're all aligned, everybody in this room and everybody beyond this room are aligned shoulder and shoulder together to get the resources that we need, as much of the resources as is needed to face these very daunting tasks. Because all the money we can generate is not going to be enough. More is never enough. And the needs continue to grow, which is really the other point that I want to make. Despite all of our efforts, from many indicators, the health of our children is not improving. And by that, I don't mean to criticize Dr. Ellender, although I do hold him personally responsible. But the overall health of our families in this state and this nation does not appear to be improving. We have so many struggling families. We have so much out there, that so many unmet needs. Child protection is another deserved focus of attention for the failures of our child protection system, which are serious, and we're going to address those problems as well. But I talk to child and family social service providers all over the state, and I talk to district attorneys, county attorneys, and others who are applying for judgeships, and I say, if they've worked 10 or 20 years in a particular area, what are the changes have you noticed? And every time it's about the increased number and the increased severity of child abuse, family abuse, and the signs of serious dysfunction in so many of our Minnesota families, and in some cases no families at all, in some cases fatal consequences before a child can even arrive into the social service network. Similarly, when the Minneapolis school system has been evaluating the categories of offenses that qualify for a suspension, I read that they have 5 levels applying to 4- and 5-year-olds, and level 5 is basically destroying the classroom, destroying furniture, tearing down on the walls. These are 4- and 5-year-old children who are basically, in most cases, I think, leaving the family, if they have a family, and coming for the very first time to some socializing environment experience, and they're already manifesting severe distress. And so I think we got to look more broadly, and I think we need to be champions of the broader need, and I don't have the answer, although when I look around this room and think of all of you who have real expertise and ongoing commitment, if we start talking about this in a way that really focuses on the right questions, we'll start coming up with more of the right answers. And we think we're going to have to really go back. We're going from kindergarten to pre-kindergarten and now to age 3 and now to 0 to 3. And we're going deeper and deeper to the root cause, which is families that are struggling to make it in Minnesota, in this country. You know, we had a big fight last year about the minimum wage, about raising the minimum wage to $8 an hour. Well, $8 an hour is, for a family of 4, one wage earner, about 2/3 of the federal poverty level for a family of 4. At $9.50, which some people think is just off the charts, the income would be, for a family of 4, one wage earner, about 80% of the federal poverty level. We have so many people that are buried under the various afflictions that are caused by inadequate incomes and inadequate opportunities, and yet the society as a whole does not seem to be responsive to those urgent needs. From November of last year, to November of the year before, the average weekly wage in Minnesota increased by 1 penny. 1 penny over a year during a period of significant employment growth and unemployment dropping, and there's something missing. There's something missing in our understanding of what children who are 4 and 5 years old and older have already been having to suffer through, endure, and try to live through. That's driving so many of these inequities that we then spend millions and millions of dollars and time and very dedicated work to respond to try to remediate. When if we don't get to the source and we don't figure out what's driving families to dysfunction, to failure, and even to disintegration, if we don't get at that, if we can't talk about that, and I've tried to talk about it a couple of times and had my head handed to me on a platter, which is why I'm leaving immediately after finishing these remarks. But if we can't talk about it in a compassionate and dispassionate way among ourselves, if we can't explore what it is that's not right about our society, and I'm not trashing our society. There are many things that are going great. There are many kids that are doing well, many families that are prospering. But if we're talking about the kids that we're trying to help and spending all these time and money and people and resources trying to save, and trying to bring up the chance where they have the opportunity to achieve the American dream and be productive citizens and successful, happy adults. If we're doing all that and yet the number of those potential casualties continues to increase all the time, then we're missing something that really matters. And so I hope that in the midst of all of this, in the midst of the legislative skirmish over how the money should be spent and best spent, that we remember that what we're dealing with is something that's deeper than what any of those programs seem to be addressing, and that we try to figure out, all of you, and I'll be glad to listen, what it is that needs to be done to change that. So have a good morning. Thank you very much for the chance to appear, and I'll be back next year, I promise.
Well, one thing that I think we all appreciate about great leaders is they do, in fact, stand tall, and they also say the truth. And they say the truth when sometimes it's not always comfortable. And one of the messages, and there were many the governor left us with today that I think will add a lot of rich context to the balance of our morning, is something that we as a group of advocates are, in fact, guilty of. And that is, we sometimes work so hard on our issue that we get in conflict with each other. And we lose sight of the fact that we are here to really smartly address the needs of children and youth and families. And I will personally take his call to action on continuing to build relationships within this room to build unified consensus on what we think those best solutions are. That, even in this room, of those who care deeply about these issues will not be easy. My thanks to the governor of the state of Minnesota for speaking straight to us and offering a great challenge.